bonjour, guten Tag, good afternoon, Ohio. Hajime mashite, watashi wa Keren desu. Very nice to meet all of you. Thank you for joining me for this session. This is going to be an opportunity for you to join me on a trip, a journey to the future of cybersecurity. But not just any future of cybersecurity, a future that is shaped by hackers. But don't worry, I'm a friendly hacker here to take you through that. So as your tour guide, if you could just deposit some Bitcoins into my account, I'd be really, really happy with it. Don't worry, I'll pay it back. By the way, I promise this presentation will be entertaining and terrifying, or your Bitcoin back. So you can find me online as K3R3N3. That's my hacker handle. And today I'm here to show you what hackers can teach us about the future. The truth is, hackers have taught me everything I know since I was just a young child. So hackers can look like that, wearing hoodies, but they can also look like that, sitting at home, trying to understand how the internet works. I was such a curious little girl. I asked my parents so many questions. At some point, they gave up on a bedtime story and just gave me the encyclopedia. Here, figure it out. And so I figured it out. I figured out how the internet worked, and I figured out that I could find answers to all of my questions if only I could get on other people's computers. If only I could understand how the information highway worked. Nobody taught me until I met my first hacker mentor. But before we get to her, since I want you to trust me today on this journey, here's an actual photo. So this is really a photo of me from the yearbook of my school, taken by the beautiful banks of the Mediterranean Sea in Tel Aviv, circa 1994, 1995. And you're taking your time looking at me, looking at the picture, and you're like, you're not sure. Was Keren arrested for computer crime earlier that day, or did she show up? Well, first of all, I've never been convicted of any computer crime. Second of all, are you ready? Here she is. That's me. So this is the honest, embarrassing, and true picture of me. I was so much of a nerd that I looked like a little boy. And even for the school photo, of course, I wore my Sony state-of-the-art technology Walkman because I believed that technology is going to be part of all of our future. I really liked wearable technology back in the day. But I had a hacker mentor who showed me not just what hackers can do, but also that hackers can look cool. You ready to meet her? Angelina Jolie. Yeah. 1995, the movie Hackers came out, and it completely captured my imagination. Finally, I saw kids who were into the same things as I was. Kids whose passion for technology let them be the heroes of the story. Spoiler alert, if you haven't seen this movie from 1995, Angelina is not the bad guy. Actually, she leads a fierce group of cool hackers, and they save the day. But in our real world, we also have some bad guy hackers out there. And the truth is, they can teach us a lot. So since the 90s, I've dedicated my life, my career, and my passion to learning everything we can from hackers. And now that I have your attention, we're going to take a look at some of the malicious innovations, some of the creativity, some of the cleverness of bad guys, and we'll talk about what we can learn from that about our future. Certainly, perhaps one of the most innovative forms of cybercrime in the last decade has been ransomware. And you've heard a lot about ransomware. By the way, did you see that hacker? Oh, he ran somewhere. OK. Hey, I'm going to fire the AI writing my jokes. Don't worry about it. We'll get the next generation out soon. By the way, two jobs that are not going to go away, cybersecurity professionals, comedians. AI can't replace comedians just yet, and I don't think AI can replace us as security professionals. So, ransomware, right? It's not about ransomware anymore. It's about ransomware as a service, a cloud-powered distribution model, which has really helped this kind of cybercrime be the most successful form of cybercrime on the planet. How successful? Well, according to actual cryptocurrency transactions, according to analysis of blockchain information, the company called Chain Analysis has figured out that more than $1 billion have been actually paid to ransomware gangs and affiliates last year. Now, you see that big red one? And that's the king of ransomware, one of the pioneers of the ransomware as a service model. I'm sure you've heard about it, Lockbit. Now, what's really interesting about Lockbit is that here we get some surprisingly good news. If you haven't heard about it, the last couple of weeks, in fact, just last month, a collaboration between law enforcement agencies led to the takedown of some of Lockbit's infrastructure. So this is what the Lockbit darknet webpage looks like right now. The UK's National Crime Agency took the liberty to redesign it with a lot of information about the operations of the group, but also links to decryptors available for Lockbit, and a very intriguing message about the identity of Lockbit SUP, the master of Lockbit. So are you ready for it? Are you ready for him? The king of ransomware himself, allegedly, according to law enforcement agencies, is this guy, Dmitry Yurichev-Horoshev. I hope I said his name right, Lockbit SUP, if that is indeed your identity. Is he here in the room? Probably not, maybe across the border, hard to tell. But when this information came out, it was really quite shocking to see that there's still a $10 million bounty on his head. So if you do know anything about his whereabouts, maybe that information would be useful. I think another piece of information that might be useful in the investigation is looking for people with a very specific tattoo. What am I talking about? Well, in the words of Lockbit SUP himself, affiliates, ransomware affiliates, come and go, but Lockbit is eternal. That's what he said when he encouraged people to get Lockbit tattoos. So this is part of his marketing strategy, or maybe a commercial gimmick, if you will, but allegedly it was quite successful. And of course, I do apologize for the somewhat hairy or hairless images. I hope no sensitive women and children have been exposed and are now thinking about changing their career to become a tattooed cybercriminal, God forbid. So some good news there. Maybe law investigations can use this information to track more Lockbit affiliates. And if you have ever been hit by Lockbit, again, good news, a team of Japanese researchers developed a decryptor. And the Lockbit decryptor joins more than a dozen other decryptors that are now available for many successful ransomware brands, including a decryptor for Akira, which is actually ransomware that has made quite a lot of impact right here in the Nordic region. So I heard the Akira decryptor was actually created by a guy called Tony, who used to work for F-Secure. So good on you, Tony. Visit this website, No More Ransom. It's organized by several agencies around the world to help support the stop of ransomware. But I did say criminals are clever and creative, right? So while Lockbit may seem to be on the run, in fact, Lockbit affiliates are still running attacks every day and every moment. They haven't stopped. And the good guys at VX Underground, if you're unfamiliar with VX Underground, it's a great source of information about malware and cybercriminal efforts and a lot of really fascinating security stuff. So they actually decided to do a bit of an interview. They reached out to the people they know at Lockbit to ask what they're working on, and they said, well, they're not stopping, they're actually developing new projects, and they're now focusing their efforts on trying to exploit Nutanix, which is specifically software for virtualization for data centers in cloud environments. So this is what they're focused on. Again, the source for this is a site and an entity or a group of people called VX Underground. This was on one of their latest T-shirts. It's a pretty cool design. If you don't know VX Underground, I recommend you check it out. And I do hope they give me a T-shirt, because those are really cool and hard to catch. So another thing we learned from VX Underground is that Lockbit seemed to have been taken down, but a copycat calling itself Dark Vault popped up, using the same Lockbit branding, but also with this little black cat on top. So what's going on here? Is that a reference to another ransomware group at all called Black Cat? You might have heard about Black Cat. They're also pretty aggressive and innovative. Last September, they went after the two largest Las Vegas casino operators, MGM and Caesars. At least one of those attacks was successful. And one of the interesting things about Black Cat is that they actually practice something called intermittent encryption. So anybody here do intermittent fasting? Have you heard about intermittent fasting? It's a lifestyle, it's a diet. Not the dieting sort. You, my friend, you're a doctor, you know what's good for you. Okay, the rest of you, get on board. So intermittent fasting is about eating and not eating. Intermittent encryption is where ransomware is actually very sophisticated, and it will only encrypt parts of the file or some files, and that's going to help it evade detection by a lot of common security mechanisms that will look for that very telltale sign of a lot of files being encrypted. Because when a lot of files are being encrypted, that's something that's really clear to notice on an operating system. But with intermittent encryption, it's a lot harder. Another innovative fact about Black Cat, it's also the first ransomware written in Rust. Not the thing that happens to metal when it oxidizes, but Rust, a programming language that was actually recommended recently as a safer programming language. But ransomware operators have already embraced that maybe a year ago. So they're on the edge of the curve of using new programming techniques. I was told I can get a little technical with you. I was also told I should bring the heat, but to be honest, I feel like it's hot enough in here. So it's almost like the inside of an overclocked CPU. So instead, I brought my own fan. And now you're envious, I know. Don't worry, I'll tell you by the end where you can get some of these. So Black Cat recently had this incredible success in Las Vegas thanks to the help of American hackers. And this was one of the first of its kind collaborations where an American-based group of Gen Z hackers, that means hackers that are maybe younger in age, a lot of them come from the gaming world, actually collaborated with Black Hat. And that American hacker with the American accent and with very good social engineering skills was able to do a voice phishing or vishing attack and to reset the credentials to a super user account within one of the technology partners, let's call it that. Well, it's Okta, I can say it, everybody knows. But they were able to actually use that Okta super user to get inside the systems for that casino operator. And that successful attack, like I said, a first of its kind collaboration. We haven't seen a lot of these kind of collaborations with Russian-based ransomware gangs and American-based teenage Gen Z hackers. At least according to the FBI, we're going to see more of that kind of collaboration. So that's a pretty dangerous team-up, I think you'll agree, and not something we saw in the past in our cybersecurity landscape. Another interesting thing about Black Hat, I don't know if you'll consider it clever or innovative, I think it's definitely one or both, is that after this bold attack on the casinos in Las Vegas, an investigation ensued, and by the end of 2023, law enforcement was actually able to take down the darknet website controlled by Black Cat, also known as Alpha V. So Black Cat and Alpha V, it's the same group, or around the same group, and law enforcement in a collaboration was able to take down their website, or their darknet site. But they regrouped and continued their operations and continued to recruit affiliates to work with them. So after one of their affiliates was successful in actually launching a ransomware campaign against an American company, $22 million were paid as ransom. What did the Black Cat crew do? Allegedly, they ran away with the money, put this message back on their darknet site, and faked another takedown. So they basically told their affiliates, oh, we can't give you your commission, the money that you earned from the ransom that you successfully ran for us with our malware, but that's because the FBI has got all of our crypto assets and they've taken us down, as you can see with this message. But according to the more recent information that we have, this is a scam. So no honor amongst thieves, scamming the other hackers. I don't know if that's really cool. Now, let's reflect on these stories for a moment, OK? They have ransomware as a service and friends, so affiliate programs, distribution plans, marketing, of course, actively recruiting people, giving interviews. They do that all the time, doing all of these kind of gimmicks, whether it's tattoos or competitions, double, triple extortion, and sometimes an evolution of the product with a new version, looking now at cloud technology, so always looking for the next thing to exploit and doing it very fast. Intermittent encryption to avoid detection, fast and wide exploitation of any new credentials or any new information or software flaw that they get their hands on, and co-opetition. So sometimes it's a co-op, and sometimes it's competition, and sometimes it's ruthless. Now, if we think about all of these, and you take them out of the context of cybercrime, this is actually incredibly innovative. It is bold, it's innovative. If we were in Silicon Valley, people would be lining up to invest. So while Lockbit and Black Hat are maybe on the run, maybe they're changing their identities as we speak, the other groups out there like Clop, like Apos, like Akira, are still very much at large. Apos is actually in particularly nasty because it pretends to be a security product, which I think is very ironic, but also very tricky for regular individuals to understand what they're dealing with, when the ransomware calls itself a secure data protector. So incredibly ironic. Like I mentioned, Akira has been very prevalent here in the Nordic region, but there is a decryptor available for it. So it's a little bit of a good news, bad news situation. Now, some of you might remember the name Klop. Anybody here speaks Russian? No? Nobody wants to expose themselves? You do? So what does Klop mean? A small insect. Yes, that's a very polite answer. Thank you. I think it's a small insect of the sort that you just can't get rid of. Right? It's the type of insect that even after global warming is going to be around and successful. Klop, you might remember that name from actually last summer, where they had an incredibly successful run of ransomware, taking advantage of Progress Move It, which is a data transfer product, and taking advantage of some of these other products that I have named. So Klop and other ransomware groups are really specializing right now at exploiting remote monitoring and management software and data transfer solutions like these, but also like these. So Ivanti, which actually has a VPN product, has also been exploited in the wild by bad guys. So they're very sarcastic. They call their own ransomware a data protection solution, and they use data protection solutions to hack organizations. And there's a new tactic that's now on the rise. Of course, I imagine this audience has heard about botnets. You know all about botnets. But one of the things we discovered in the last year is that there are specific adversaries that are creating their own botnets using some of these exploited devices or VPN servers that I mentioned earlier, but also using people's home routers, small office or home routers, SOHO routers. So this is an example of one such network called the KV botnet. The people who discovered it are called Black Lotus Labs. They're actually part of Lumen, which is one of the largest communications providers in the United States. They used to be called CenturyLink. And they identify this on their network in the United States. So what's happening here is a network of infected devices that's actually used almost like their own little darknet that the bad guys built using other people's computers. Now, there's a more detailed analysis, actually a really great job by the people at Mandiant with Google, so you can take photos of that as well if you're interested. Understanding this concept of how bad guys are crafting their own versions of Tor, if you will, their own networks in the global network to run their espionage and malicious operations. So they're not doing that to steal people's credit card numbers. They're not doing that to run ransomware. They're doing that to hide their cyber espionage and their reconnaissance against critical infrastructure. This was, I think, in particular important. Now, Google calls this kind of activity using ORB networks. ORB is an acronym for Operational Relay Boxes. But what it all boils down to is like this kind of fancy pew-pew map where the bad guys can create their network to launch their attacks, And it would be really hard for us as security practitioners to understand these are attacks that are actually controlled and directed by China or by an adversary group located in China. Now, quickly, I also want to talk about a different type of attack, one that takes advantage of a company that you've never heard of, I imagine. Anybody here ever heard of Sisense? So they're actually from my hometown. They're from Tel Aviv. And it's a data analytics company. And they provide data analytics for a lot of other companies, including Fortune 500 companies. And so when Sisense set up their own GitLab server to manage their own code, they actually neglected to secure that server, or in fact, they neglected to clear out of that code some hard-coded passwords and tokens. So from the GitLab repository, there were some hard-coded tokens into the AWS S3 buckets used by that company. And from those, the bad guys got access to hundreds, if not thousands, of credentials, tokens, and certificates belonging not to Sisense, but to the customers of Sisense. And this is what's known in our industry as a supply chain attack. But I also want to spend a moment on another supply chain attack that has actually some connection to Finland as well. So anybody here know Tukani or XZUtils? I imagine there's some Linux developers. Yeah? Do you know him personally? OK. So of course, many of us know and like Linux operating systems, Linux distributions of different free and open source software. And there's a specific library called XZUtils, which is a very popular compression tool that's built in most of the leading Linux distributions of the world. And it's actually developed and maintained by this one guy called Tukani, who is originally from Finland, or so I hear. Now, a couple years ago, another developer reached out to Tukani and said, hey, mate, you're not developing fast enough. You're not fixing bugs fast enough. Let me help you on this free and open source project. Let me be a contributor so that I can also create code and push commits into the repository of XZUtils, the one that goes into all of the large Linux distributions in the world. Now, this bad actor did that for quite some time, and they convinced poor Tukani to give them access. And according to Tukani, or Lasse Colin, that's what I imagine his parents called him, he was actually kind of bullied by this bad actor, calling himself or herself or themselves Jia Tan. So Jia Tan maliciously introduced backdoors into this code. And they did that over years, after building their reputation as a supposedly positive contributor of code to the project. And they did that so that they can actually have that backdoor pre-installed in a great deal of the world's Linux distributions. Now, this was discovered, thankfully, and again, ironically, by a Microsoft researcher. And so the major backdoor that never was prevented in this case. But it brings to mind this amazing webcomic. I don't know how many of you know XKCD, a very popular webcomic. I think it's really cool. And this particular one is extremely accurate. So all modern software and digital infrastructure relies, in the end, on a small project maintained by some guy. But in this case, it says Nebraska. It should say probably Finland, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. So if anybody here knows Lasse Colin, give him my thanks for his hardships. Now, this particular type of attack, software supply chain attacks, I'm not just telling you about it because I think it's a cool story. I'm telling you about it because it happens to be #1 on the list from the European Network and Information Security Agency's agency. They did a forecast of predictions in the next few years. #1 on the list, supply chain and compromise of software dependencies. #1. So this is a pretty good report to get acquainted with, especially if you're protecting systems here in Europe. But I was curious, because you go through that list, and there's some really interesting and important topics to discuss, including the skills shortage. But get all the way down to #9, and you see abuse of AI. Frankly, I think AI has earned a spot that is more in the top 5 of threats. Specifically, let's spend a moment talking about transformers and how generative AI has actually been helping bad guys. So we are all familiar now with ChatGPT, with Bard, with Gemini, with Claude, with DALL-E, with Midjourney. Please let me introduce you to their malicious cousins. So this is a list of maliciously developed, intently maliciously developed generative AI models and frameworks. Some of them might be still in the proof of concept stage. One of them, the very last one, called SPY, so the one with the scariest name, was actually created by a security research team from Korea as an experiment and proof of concept. It is not necessarily used by bad guys, but the ones on top definitely are. And bad guys have been not just developing this, they've also been selling these types of models to other bad guys. So it still remains to be seen how many of these are just scams to get lower-level cybercriminals to pay for a hot new generative AI cybercriminal tool. It's quite possible some of them are scams. But here's one. This is WormGPT, perhaps the one that made the biggest name for itself. And it calls itself the biggest enemy of ChatGPT. Interesting, isn't it? And here in this example, you can see it's being asked to write malware in Python, and it's just doing it. It's not saying, sorry, I can't do that, Dave. It's just going ahead and creating that malware. Here's another example. This one's called Predator AI. 11,000 lines of Python code, terrible UI, incredibly terrible graphical UI, but pre-configured to attack a lot of popular cloud and web application type servers, including WordPress, Joomla, Amazon AWS is somewhere in there. So this is another interesting tool. And again, this is being marketed by bad guys. Actually, you can see on the right-hand side, you can see a list, or these are like the Telegram handles of the creators and the Telegram channel where they sell it. So it's like a Telegram store, if you will, for malware. So if we take a look back at our industry, what we've been trying to do as security practitioners, let me tell you why generative AI and hackers is a love story that's not going to go away soon. Phishing, the primary vector for so many attacks. How is generative AI helpful for phishing? Naturally, text translation, content and image localization. It can create different variations of phishing campaigns, and it can do it 100 times faster. It says 10x, but actually from an experiment that IBM X-Force did, they tasked a human team to create a phishing campaign and a team using AI to create a phishing campaign. The AI team did it in 100 times faster. They did it in 10 minutes versus about 900 minutes. So that's about 100 times faster. I hope I got the math right on that. You can fix me later. So credential theft, credential stuffing, automation is already a big part of that. Doesn't have to be generative AI to help bad guys. And direct exploitation and attacks of servers, VPN products, security products. Well, generative AI is definitely helping automate scanning, exploitation, malware authorship. Traditionally, the part of the security or part of the cybercriminal ecosystem that's the most difficult is creating new malware. Well, generative AI is very helpful with that. It's also helpful with creating deep fakes. So I imagine you heard this famous story about a German guy who got a call from his UK boss, or maybe it was a UK guy who got a call from his German boss. But the short of it is that the boss was telling the guy, you have to transfer 243 euros right now to our subcontractor in Hungary, or we'll lose the project. And he did that with his own voice. But of course, this was a deep fake voice generated by deepfake algorithms, and it did work. The fraud did work. I imagine you heard about this story. You know why? It's from 5 years ago. Bad guys have had 5 years to take this business model and to perfect it. Case in point, just a couple months ago, a full-on video conference, orchestrated team of deepfake voice and video pretending to be a chief financial officer for a Hong Kong-based firm. I imagine you heard about this story. According to the Hong Kong cybersecurity police, so this is from their actual press release, I watched it to verify the story was true. The bad guys used videos from previous conferences by the same company to train and generate the deep fake that actually tricked an employee. The employee believed he was meeting his CFO and an entire group of his colleagues in a live video conference. So this just happened a few months ago. I imagine we're going to see more of that. In that case, they made away with 200 million Hong Kong, which is about 25 million US. So that's impressive. I think at this point, you're fully depressed, and you'll agree with me, it's a legit criminal renaissance out there. And while our jobs used to be pretty hard as security practitioners, we were this guy. So how many knew this is Mario? Before he was Super Mario, he was just Mario fighting Donkey Kong, throwing flaming barrels of oil at him. This was our job as security practitioners. Welcome to the new age. It is now 1,000 times faster. Bad guys can do what they want, and we have to deal with it. And I didn't even mention how nation-state adversaries are using tools like legit ChatGPT to try and create malicious attacks. So this is from a report by OpenAI. They found on ChatGPT that malicious actors from 4 countries were using ChatGPT or trying to use ChatGPT for different espionage and covert malware development. Not a lot of surprises who are these countries, but in case you are curious, that's who it was. Again, according to Microsoft and OpenAI. Sorry, sound guy, I know you hate it when I do that, but it's super hot up here. OK, so what does it all come down to with these types of attacks? It's not about our credit card numbers. It's not about our Facebook friends. It's not about even technology. It's not about our data centers. It's about trust. It's about bad guys taking advantage of technology to earn our trust and then shatter our trust. That's probably the most dangerous thing that's happening right now in our world with deep fakes, with generative AI. That's what we have to watch out for. So, are you ready to take some actions? Are you sufficiently terrified in that you are motivated to follow the hackers in their footsteps and try to do something about it? Who's going to defend us? Who's going to keep the trust? Look to your right, look to your left, look behind you. It's you. Congratulations. We have to make the actions. We have to make the choices that are going to help defend our future. It's about using technology so that we can make better, everyday security decisions, using automation where we can, and training people to be proactively paranoid where we can't use automation to help us out. It's about creating and choosing tools and technologies that give us the most impact, the most return on our security investment. And I think the good people of WithSecure have some recommendations about that. One of the key things I am encouraging people to invest in, visibility. Because you can't protect what you can't see. And if bad guys know your network better than you do, you're going to have a hard day. I imagine a lot of people here in the room are familiar with Shodan, which is a scanning engine for connected devices. Bad guys are, of course, familiar with Shodan, and they've also connected it to Metasploit to create something called Autosploit, using the scanning capability of Shodan with the exploitation capability of Metasploit. So we're going to see more of these types of inventions, using automation by bad guys. We have to do better. It's difficult. It's a science and an art. And we need all the humans we can, because we don't have enough humans in our industry. So this is where I encourage you to think about where can you use AI and automation for your benefit? How can you automate to augment? Because you know how the saying goes, never bring a knife to a gunfight? Gen AI is kind of the gun for bad guys right now. So think about that. I know it's a little depressing, but it's also the keys to our future. It's about training a future-ready workforce. You yourself will not be replaced at your job by AI. I firmly believe that. Will you be replaced by a human that knows how to work with AI? Possible. So this is something I want to recommend. And I also want to recommend the hacker mindset as a tool that helps us understand the things that we are missing. Yes, hackers might wear funny HTML dresses, I guess. But we can also be helpful. There are a lot of competitions out there, like bug bounty programs, that have helped a lot of companies, including some of the biggest brands in the world, collaborate with hackers. Even the large language model manufacturers, the companies that create large language models, have reached out to hackers. Last summer at DEF CON, the world's largest hacking competition, there was a first-of-its-kind Hack the Future AI large language model hacking competition. 2,000 hackers helped inform how we can protect these models. It's almost like they are acting as elements in an immune system. These friendly hackers are out there protecting us. Oh, wait, who said that? I said that a decade ago. Hackers can sometimes help us as the immune system for the internet, but we need to build our own type of cyber immunity. So here's just a short version of the recommendations I gave you. Feel free to take photos if you like. Using automation and AI to build our skill sets, to build our workforces. Using the hacker perspective, bug bounty programs, and threat hunting, and the hacker mindset. And focusing on how you can create visibility. I'm going to give you a second. OK, but let's run through that. You can, of course, ignore my recommendations. I'm sure everything is going to be just fine if you do. But if you're still sitting back, kind of daydreaming, and you're thinking, oh, come on, Keren's too in love with the future, I'm still thinking about how things used to be, when everything was on-prem, and I knew exactly what security procedures to follow. My friends, I'm here with a wake-up call. It's time to wake up and build the kind of adaptability and resilience that hackers have developed for the last 30 years. It's not the time to keep calm and carry on, though we could definitely use some cool factor. It's a time to adapt and evolve. It's a time to take action. And I hope you make the right decisions. I hope you decide how to protect your future. It is in your hands. Thank you so much for your attention. And one more thing. First of all, if you want to ask me questions, you can find me online, k3r3n3.com. But if you want to know where to get a cool fan and maybe meet a cyber horse, I saw a cool horse in the, outside this venue, you're welcome to join me in my hometown, Tel Aviv. Weather is guaranteed to be sunny or your money back, and it's a free event. So you're welcome to join me, Tel Aviv Cyber Week, June 24th until June 27th, where you'll meet a lot of hackers and build your hacker skill sets. Thank you, everybody, and let's have a wonderful afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Sayonara.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Keren.
Thank you. Kitos.